Mop Bop with a question about what is a sign of prop load starting? Is there any visual signs there, Chris?
So right immediately at the T minus 35-minute mark, which we would have had 5 minutes ago, not really on it, and it kind of depends on atmospheric conditions of the day. So like right now, I don't know if you can see it on the zoom in on the zoom here on your screen, but what you'd be looking for is basically like wispy little vapors around starting at the bottom of the vehicle and then gradually working their way up. Um, that's what you would be looking for. In terms of the obvious can't miss it visual sign, that comes at T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds when the big purge vent from the transporter erector happens. The thing that usually gets us to say, like, we get it, Falcon 9, you vape. Yeah. But
Very
that's the
cool.
first big visual sign that you'd want to look for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite like Starship testing if you guys are more familiar with those
Right.
streams where it's like, oh, the recondenser is on. We can see it. There's a giant cloud that is actively, telling us that the rocket is either being fueled or what have you. So a little bit more oblique here, but looking for the wispy vapors coming off of the container that is the tanks on that first stage. Let's see. Good question there from Mop Bop. And satisfying name to say, really. So
Mhm.
we are just under 30 minutes from T0. Transporter 2 progressing nicely. In about 9 minutes, we should get that big 20-minute vent that Chris was just talking about. So keep your eyes open for that. Let's see. Here's one from Shikamu1. Hopefully I pronounced that name correctly. They're asking why Falcon 9 sometimes will make sonic boom looking clouds as it goes supersonic. I think they're talking
Ah,
about the shock collar, right? Is that what that's called?
yeah. The shock collar, the vapor cone, the big white thing that appears around the vehicle as it breaks the sound barrier. Yeah, that is that is atmospheric conditions on the day. The higher the humidity, usually the more pronounced that shock collar is. The lower the humidity, usually not. It can depend a little bit on if the vehicle is flying a more depressed versus lofted trajectory on the day. So it all just it's all this it's all the atmosphere basically in terms of how prominent that visual vapor cone is.
Yep.
How prominent the vapor cone is from a visual standpoint. That's the word order I was actually looking for there.
Solid word order, Chris. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
the same. It's the same with aircraft, right? If you're photographing an aircraft, sometimes you
Right.
get lucky in the day, and there's nice little trailers coming off of the wings, or we've all seen, I think, photos of jet aircraft with that sort of shock collar as they go supersonic type
Yes.
look, and that only happens in the exact right atmospheric conditions.
And those are what you were talking about photographing. Were you talking about the little wing vortices that sometimes
Both,
form behind? Oh,
yes.
both. Yes. Yeah, because those are atmospheric conditions on the day as well. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, those wing vortices are beautiful, and if you get those when you're shooting jets, sometimes that can be really nice. And the actually, I photographed talking about the supersonic like shock front kind of thing. I photographed a jet out in the desert where, of course, there's not enough moisture in the air for that sort of vapor cone to
Yeah.
form. But in the photo, if you look really closely, you can see it almost looks like the air has been cracked. Like you can see the shock
Yeah.
wave in the air. It's astounding. So even if you don't see that forming that vapor cone forming as Falcon 9 ascends, it's still happening. Like those atmospheric forces are still uh, occurring at that phase of flight as it breaks the sound barrier. It's just not visible because there's no, the conditions aren't right.
Right.
Very cool. Let's see. DYU, I know you. Thank you for the support. They say Chris G and Jack Fan Club. Magic Skates, thank you for the support. They say probably a silly question, but wondering if this was the launch that scrubbed yesterday. Yes, it is in fact the launch that scrubbed yesterday due to
Yes.
a range violation from a helicopter, which I sort of find interesting, right? Like helicopters aren't super fast, and they
Yeah.
don't have the longest range, right? Not like a commercial wide body airliner. So what was that helicopter doing, and where was it? It's quite
Yeah.
perplexing.
It is. I will say this, and I want nobody to take this as this is totally what happened yesterday. I offer it solely as a potential explanation because it is weird, right? If I had to guess, someone forgot to check which way the rocket was going. Someone forgot to check where the airspace closure notices is and took off and went due east into the southern exclusion zone.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, based on just the rapid fire nature of how it happened yesterday. That's a guess. That's simply a like that might be what the reason was. We will wait, of course, for the FAA investigation to be complete and the FAA report to come out on what happened. Exactly.
Yeah, but that's not baseless speculation, right? The polar corridor
No,
here is
they're new.
relatively new. Rockets launching in this manner from Florida is relatively new. This will be what, the third or yeah,
Third,
third of
yeah,
these?
yeah.
So if you are a seasoned, maybe perhaps, dare I imagine, a grizzled old helicopter pilot, and you just assume rocket launch, okay, I'm not going to go that way. No, you probably should look at the guidance there in the NOTAMs.
And actually, I believe I can see with the naked eye some of those wispy little white vapors working their way up the side of Falcon 9's first stage. So,
Sure enough.
to whoever was just asking, what's our visual? We got the correct atmospheric conditions to see it before the big vent at T minus 20. So, there you go.
Look at that. Yeah, so good sign that Falcon 9 is being fueled actively, and we are progressing towards a launch. Oh wow, what happened? We just got a whole bunch of new members. Thank you so
Oh,
much to
wow.
all of our new members. Carl Andreessen, thanks for the new membership. Jeff Cheney, thank you for the new membership and the upgrade. Ellen, thank you for the support there. Thomas, thank you for the new membership. Or Tomas. Mike Weissman, thank you for the new membership. So many new members. This is awesome. Thank you guys. And Skynet, thank you for the new membership. Again, those memberships absolutely are key to allowing us to do what we do, and it really helps us sort of come up with a game plan and execute a lot of the ideas that we have. Dare I say? I mean, I'm just gonna bite my tongue, but thank you, members, for everything that you enable us to do. And there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline. So, just really, really want to reiterate thanks to all of you. And don't forget, you do not have to super chat or be a member for me to say your name. You can ask a good question. So at NASA Spaceflight in chat, ask a question, and it'll pop up here in our software. But 23 minutes to launch, just over. Fingers crossed, everything goes great, and we don't get another range violation today, and the weather does in fact cooperate. Chris, speaking
Yeah.
of the weather, what is the status of that beautiful blue hole in the clouds you were talking about earlier? Is that still there?
Less blue and less whole, but still there to a degree. I do see a rain shower offshore moving toward us, so I'm gonna be, but I cannot speak to like the trajectory it's on.
Got it.
And if they're fueling, then what that basically means is that the weather team has said, yeah, we really do think you will be good at 1531, based on what we're seeing in terms of how things are moving, how things are trending. They usually don't start to fuel when they still have time left in the window, unless the range weather officers have said, yeah, we think you'll be okay at that time.
Got it. All right.
Not a
Well,
guarantee you will be, just that they think you will be.
yeah.
Does
Well,
look like there is that one shower that might come and hit Chris. We'll see.
I can see the ITL causeway, so I hope not, but I've got the raincoat to throw over the gear before I hop in the car if needed.
hey, it works. It works. Let's see. Here's a kind of a silly, well, not silly. I mean, it's a good question. Crory asking, any chance that debris will land on cows in Cuba, as happened in the 1960s?
There is that chance. The Falcon 9 does, when it goes down range, its ground track of where it would impact if the second stage engine just shut down. Not if the vehicle like blew up for some reason, but if the second stage engine just shuts down and it's just arcing downward. Now, probably what would happen in that regard, if it was aiming for Cuba, is they would trigger the AFTS on that so that it would safely deposit everything down into the ocean. The AFTS on the second stage does remain active until just before engine shutdown at orbit insertion. So they would have that option to blow it in the event of an anomaly, which is exactly what the AFTS is there for. So I don't believe that because AFTS is mandated to fly the Southern Polar Corridor route. So the Delta IV and the Atlas V can't do it, and Vulcan can't do it either because they use manual flight termination systems. It has to be automated flight termination to fly the Southern Polar Corridor route out of here per the Space Force about 1.5 years ago, or Air Force, Space Force, whatever they were back then. So yeah, basically they put in place everything to prevent that from happening again. But of course, if something malfunctions, it could always happen, but they've taken the steps to not allow that anymore.
Makes sense. So the cows will be safe, hopefully.
Yes. And the people.
And we are at 20 minutes and 20 seconds. And coming up,
there it is.
That's the T-minus 20-minute vent. Look at that.
Well, our clock is synced. We know that because the T-minus 20 vent is at 2020. So there we go.
Excellent. So further progressing towards a launch of Transporter 2 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Let's see, a lot of questions about the scrub. It was a wayward helicopter. It was a range violation that caused the scrub yesterday. Let's see what else we got. Here's a good question from Dougal, longtime stream enjoyer. I don't know what to call you. Longtime stream viewer, longtime supporter. What's up, Dougal? Saying, have we ever seen an RTLS landing view from a booster without video dropouts like we've been getting from drone ship landings lately? Is that something perhaps to look out for on this launch?
It might be. I'm going to answer this 2 ways. Off the top of my head, I do. Yes, I think we have. I think the Falcon Heavy side cores we have seen mostly uninterrupted down to the ground. I believe. I think we have, and at the very least, they did release like a really good video from when the SAOCOM booster did the Southern Polar launch and then returned to launch site landing here. Oh gosh, that was only 10 months ago that the first polar launch out of here happened. And we're on the
Time
third.
flies.
Yeah. I do believe we have. Yes, I know we have on the Falcon Heavies. I don't have a memory of it on the single stick Falcons, but you got to remember, I'm here and not watching the broadcast, so I think they've got all the technology to do it. I just can't answer if they've actually shown it uninterrupted on a broadcast.
Very cool. All right, well, good answer. Thank you. Let's see. Steve Austin saying they're there at Jetty Park, so please launch today. Well, good luck, Steve. And good luck, everybody. If you're out there watching our broadcast and happen to be, sort of dual fisting, watching the rocket with your eyes and our broadcast too, that's super nifty. And so thanks everybody that supports what we do and watches our streams. Here's another one. Let's see. Oh, I had it and I lost it. Okay, here we go. Alex Bowers. I like this question. Asking, in our opinion, how many times do you see them being able to reuse a first stage? I'm gonna say, 50. Honestly, it depends on how much refurbishment it would take, right? But it seems like it doesn't actually take too much refurbishment, and it might not be out of the question for these rockets to fly a lot of times. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, so I know Elon and Gwen have both said that they are each individually built to fly 100. Although the total number that they could fly, I think Elon said was probably more than that. But Gwen then followed that up by saying that from the sort of manifest that was developing, that she really didn't see, at least in the immediacy, how one would get that high up in a flight number. And then yesterday, Elon said that there is at least one booster that has a manifest out to flight 30 at this point. So sort of in there, like, if everything goes perfectly, what are we thinking the booster assignments are for each missions going out well into the future? There's at least one that goes out to 30. Although, as we were talking yesterday, to break the world record, they got it. One has to get to 40 to break the world record to be the most flown orbital class vehicle.
That was one of my favorite moments from yesterday's stream. The fact that you could just immediately rattle off the number of flights for each shuttle orbiter and then determine how many flights a Falcon 9 booster would have to make to equal and better that. And that is 39 for Discovery and 40 to top it, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
That's exactly right. Yep. That is it. Steven, can you grab the yeah, oh my god, I see the rain. Can you grab my raincoat passenger seat? Yeah. Crap.
Godspeed there, Chris, with the rain.
Yeah.
Thank you for dealing with it while we wait for a launch. Just 15 minutes, 45 seconds away, hopefully. That should be enough time for it to pass, right?
Oh gosh, yes. This is going to be a quick little hit and run rain shower here. Let me just get everything. Yeah, yep, Jack, take it away.
Do your thing. We're looking at
the shower is dissipating because the shower that's hitting him is that green and blue blob that's kind of dissipating as it comes on shore.
Yep.
And I don't think it's going to last long at all.
Very good. Okay, cool. Well, I love that we are able to switch over to the weather radar view. Like we just need to get Das in the studio in front of his green screen and doing some sort of gesturing at various areas. That would be great. Good question, Alex, about the number of times they would reuse a first. What do you think about that, Michael? How many times do you think they can reuse a first stage?
Well, Elon originally said after every 10 flights, you would have to have substantial refurbishment. Now it sounds like that might be extended a bit based on the actual data they've gotten. But with substantial refurbishment, they could fly them a lot longer. So it's hard to say how often they're going to need them to fly with Starship coming online. They already have a fleet of about a dozen boosters. So I'm not sure they're going to need that many more if Starship comes online in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that if Starship gets to work as rapidly as SpaceX hopes, it could be the case that there are Falcon 9 boosters that get retired that are perfectly flight worthy and could fly many, many, many more times, but it's just no longer necessary. But I do have a feeling that despite Starship, it'll be quite a while before we see that. Maybe like 3 or 4 years. Perhaps more. I try not to be overly optimistic with Starship because I want it to all happen today, but these things take time. Even if they go fast, they take time.
They do indeed. Okay, I have the camera all configured and safe and ready, so I'm back.
And it looks like the focus might have gotten bumped.
Oh, did it? Hang on.
Here's a question.
There we go.
Can they fly Falcon Heavy on the polar corridor?
Yes.
Cool. I had no idea.
Yes.
LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
ESTS is ready for launch.
Ignition.
Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8.
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, June 30th, and we're here at SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 3:31 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. My name is Andy Tran. I'm a production supervisor here at SpaceX. Welcome to the webcast for SpaceX's Transporter 2 mission. It's our second dedicated smallsat rideshare program launch and second launch, or 20th launch of 2021. For those of you who joined us yesterday, you know that we got all the way down to T-minus 11 seconds, but had to stand down from our launch attempt due to rotary aircraft entering the keep-out zone. We are expecting the airways to stay clear today and looking forward to having Falcon 9 deliver the 85 spacecraft and 3 Starlink satellites on board to orbit. Now, this includes CubeSats, microsats, and orbital transfer vehicles, sometimes called space tugs, which will deploy their spacecraft after separating from Falcon 9. Today's launch is SpaceX's second polar orbit launch from the East Coast, and only the second polar trajectory since the late 1960s flown out of Cape Canaveral. A polar orbit is one in which satellites pass above the North and South poles, as opposed to the equator. SpaceX has worked closely with the Air Force and the FAA to create a trajectory that meets the necessary safety requirements for flight. So far, everything's looking like a great day for a rocket launch at the Cape. And with liftoff in just under 10 minutes, let's take a closer look at Falcon 9. The 2-stage vehicle is standing about 229 feet tall, or slightly taller than a 21-story building. It's named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, and the number 9 indicates the number of Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Today's mission is the 8th flight for this particular booster. That bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage. Its objective is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. From there, it will make its way back to Earth and target a landing on land this afternoon on Landing Zone 1, which is the pad that you see on screen right now. And if you're an Eastern Florida resident, you might even be able to see Falcon 9 over the ocean, or also hear one or more of the sonic booms as Falcon 9 makes its way back to land. On top of the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage. It connects the 2 stages and houses the pneumatic pushers that allow the first and second stage to separate during flight. And then on top of the inner stage is the Falcon 9 second stage, which takes the payload to its eventual destination in orbit. After the first stage separates about 2.5 minutes into flight, the second stage will then carry the 88 spacecraft to orbit. Similar to the first transporter mission, we'll be flying a fuel dome payload tray, which is essentially a small platform mounted on the back end of the second stage fuel dome that will release a handful of spacecraft today. This is worth mentioning as we expect this tray to obstruct one of our 2 MVAC views during flight. At the top of the rocket, you'll notice a large nose cone. This is called the fairing. Encapsulated inside the fairing are all 88 satellites, protecting them until the vehicle is outside of the Earth's atmosphere, at which point the fairing separates to expose the satellites to space. For today's mission, our fairing is making its 3rd flight, and we're also going to be attempting to recover the fairing halves from the water following landing with our chartered recovery vessel, HOS Briarwood. The chief engineer held a technical poll at T-minus 60 minutes, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at T-minus 38 minutes. Since the T-minus 35-minute mark, Falcon 9 has been loading propellants. The vehicle is a bipropellant vehicle, which means it uses 2 types of propellants. For fuel, a refined form of kerosene called RP1, and for oxidizer, super chilled liquid oxygen, we also refer to that as LOX. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage and almost fully loaded on the first stage. Liquid oxygen loading is currently underway. We're also loading helium into storage vessels on the first and second stages. We take cold helium and run it through heat exchangers on the Merlin engines, and this hot helium is used to fill the empty volume in the tanks created by the engine pumps pulling propellant out of the stage. A few seconds ago, engine chill began. This is where we opened the pre-valves between the first stage prop tanks and the 9 Merlin engines. This allows a little bit of cold liquid oxygen to flow into the turbopumps, bringing them down to a temperature close to that of the super chill propellant that will soon be flowing through the engines at liftoff. We're at T-minus 6 minutes and 30 seconds and counting. The vehicle is healthy. We're tracking no issues so far. The range is standing by to support, and the weather is green for today's liftoff. All systems continue to go for an on-time liftoff at 3:31 p.m. Eastern Time.
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
Today's launch will mark SpaceX's 20th mission of the year and the 127th mission to date. Of the 9 missions flown so far this year, 18 were on reuse booster, and will be the 8th flight for this booster flying on today's mission. Now, if you look at all of the Falcon 9 missions SpaceX has flown to date, half have been flown on flight-proven boosters. Reusability allows SpaceX to fly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of space access. It also allows us to increase our launch cadence and provide more flight opportunities for our customers like those on board today's mission. In fact, last year, we launched more than any other launch provider in the world. If you've been keeping track, you know our first transporter mission launched a record-breaking 143 spacecraft. And while there are fewer customer spacecrafts on board today's compared to Transporter 1, we're actually launching more mass to orbit on this mission than the previous one. SpaceX is targeting 3 dedicated rideshare flights to sun-synchronous orbits per year, and we also offer opportunities for a ride to orbit on our Starlink missions, which launch every couple of weeks. Small satellites can ride to space on SpaceX's Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, as well as Starship in the not-too-distant future. We are under 5 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. In a few moments here, the strongback will begin to open up its clamp arms, and once open, it will begin to retract away from the rocket to its pre-launch position, about 2 degrees away from the vehicle. And as Falcon 9 lifts off, hydraulic arms will continue to pull the strongback further away to provide clearance for liftoff. So there was the call out for the clamp arms to start opening up. They are situated right at the bottom of the fairing there. The strongback is part of the transporter erector, also called the TE. The TE's job is to roll Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, raise it to a vertical launch position, also route power, fluids, and communication to both the rocket and satellite. The TE has a launch mount that the first stage is clamped to, and the strongback that is hinged to that launch mount. And you can start to hear the hiss and pop of pressure venting from the rocket and the plumbing in the transporter erector. At this stage, the strongback should be reclined to its pre-launch position, again 2 degrees away from the vehicle. We are just over 3 minutes until liftoff. The vehicle remains in good health. The first and second stages are almost fully fueled. Gaseous oxygen is also venting from the base of Falcon 9. That is the chillin of the Merlin turbopumps. About a minute before liftoff, you will hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's own internal flight computers are now autonomously controlling the launch countdown. This is a great shot of the fairing, and inside that fairing again are the 88 spacecraft as part of the Transporter 2 mission. Weather remains green. The range is also standing by to support. And as a reminder, if we don't get the opportunity to launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at the same time.
Stage 2 lock load is complete.
And there was the call up for second stage LOX loading complete. That is the last of propellant loading. Falcon 9 is now fully fueled and ready for liftoff in about 1 minute and 40 seconds. You can start to see some white clouds starting to form around Falcon 9. That is normal and expected for us at this stage in the countdown. When the dense cold liquid oxygen meets the warmer ambient air of Florida, it begins to condense and form the white clouds that you see on screen.
Falcon is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup. You can start to hear some of the cheers here in Hawthorne. The first and second stages are beginning to pressurize for launch.
Falcon 9, Transporter 2, LD is go for launch.
That was the launch director giving the final go for launch. We are T-minus 30 seconds from liftoff. Let's tune into terminal count and watch as the Transporter 2 mission begins.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
First stage chamber pressure is nominal.
We are T-plus 42 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 has cleared its tower, and we're currently throttling down in preparation for max Q. That should be coming up in about 20 seconds. Max Q is where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic pressures.
Falcon 9 is supersonic. Max Q.
And you heard the call out. We've passed the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure. Falcon 9 is now headed south along the Florida coast. All is looking good with the first stage trajectory. We have 5 events coming up in quick succession in about a minute. The first is main engine cutoff, also known as MECO, followed by stage separation, where the 2 stages will separate from one another. The first stage will then perform a flip to head back towards Florida, and the MVAC engine on the second stage will perform second engine start 1 and ignite that MVAC engine. Then the first stage will also begin its first of 3 burns, the boost back burn. And this is a view from the top of Falcon 9 looking down towards the 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the first stage.
Stage separation confirmed.
And there you saw on screen, we had successful stage separation. The first stage started performing its flip maneuver. And the boost back burn should be ending in about 25 seconds.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
And there was confirmation of a successful boost back burn. Again, that is the first of 3 burns for the first stage. Coming up next is fairing deploy in a few seconds here from the top of the second stage.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And off come the 2 fairing halves, and they have separated and fallen away from the vehicle, exposing the 88 spacecraft to the vacuum of space. As a reminder, the recovery vessel HOS Briarwood will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today from the water. So we are about T plus 4 minutes and 20 seconds into flight. We have a couple of views on screen. On the right-hand side is a view of our second stage Merlin vacuum engine, also known as the MVAC engine. It's currently in the first of 2 MVAC burns. This burn should last for until the T plus 8 minute and 24 second mark. About another 4 minutes left on this burn. And the next milestone will be for the first stage to perform its entry burn. That's what you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen. Falcon 9 needs to execute an entry burn to slow itself down before hitting the dense parts of the atmosphere. And without this burn, relying on the atmosphere alone to slow Falcon 9 down would put unnecessary strain on the rocket.
Vehicle is on a nominal trajectory.
The call out for a nominal trajectory. Everything's looking great so far on the Transporter 2 mission. You also notice some honeycomb-like structures have deployed on the first stage on the left-hand side. Those are our 4 hypersonic grid fins positioned at the base of the inner stage. They help to orient the rocket during reentry by moving the center of pressure. There's also some plumes of gas coming out. This is cold nitrogen gas, which helps with attitude control. Both are essential to make sure that we have a nice targeted landing back on landing zone 1 later on in today's mission. The second burn, the entry burn, is coming up in about 30 seconds. Watch for that on the left-hand side. You can also see there's a speedometer of sorts on the bottom left-hand side. That tracks the speed of the first stage, and when we begin the entry burn, we'll start to reduce the speed, and shortly after the entry burn ends, we'll hit the denser parts of the atmosphere and also begin to further reduce our velocity as the first stage continues to make its way back towards Earth.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There's the call out, and you can see on screen 3 Merlin engines have relit and are currently slowing down the first stage. This burn is expected to last for another 15 seconds or so.
Vehicle on a nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And successful completion of our second of 3 burns. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be attempting to recover the booster for an 8th time back on land at landing zone 1. The first stage has 1 more burn left, the landing burn. It begins just before we touch down and provides the booster with a soft descent before we land. At the same time Falcon lands, we are expecting Sequel 1 of our second stage. That's second engine cutoff. And shortly after that, we'll be entering a coast phase. And you can see the Florida coast and landing zone 1 are approaching on the left-hand side of the screen as this booster makes its attempt to land for an 8th time. This is a great shot of the first stage coming down with its landing burn.
Stage 2 internal guidance.
Stage 1, London light deploy.
That was as smooth as I'd seen it. We had phenomenal shots all the way through the landing burn. You heard the sonic booms. This booster has landed for the 8th time. That is the 89th recovery of an orbital class rocket.
Stage 1 nominal landing confirmed.
And what a way to start
Nominal
off
orbit
the Transporter
insertion.
2 mission. At the same time, we did have successful second stage, second engine cutoff, and confirmation of a nominal orbital insertion. We are now going to coast for the next 45 minutes or so while we wait for second engine start 2. Just a few minutes after that, we'll begin to deploy the 88 spacecraft on board this mission. We will see you back here around the T plus 53 minute and 30 second mark.
Expected loss of signal, Cape